All right, guys, today we've got 8 tips, so make sure you watch all of them for a better bench press. But before I give you those, of course, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. I promise it's going to be good. You can always go back and undo it. And of course, subscribe and tell your friends and all that good stuff. But today's video, again, is designed for you to get more out of your bench press, specifically for building muscle. So the goal here is to develop mainly chest. Of course, there's going to be front delts involved. Of course, there's going to be triceps involved. And kind of as a byproduct of obviously trying to get as big as possible, you will in turn get stronger doing this. But this isn't a powerlifting video. So if your goal is to increase your 1 rep max, if your goal is to compete and do as well as you possibly can in bench pressing, this is not your video. Again, it's designed a little bit more in mind with trying to get a bigger chest and getting the most out of your bench press. So tip number 1 is going to be pick your arm path. So just realizing that as far as we're concerned in the muscle building world, basically your pec crosses over your shoulder joint. So for some degree, it helps move your upper arm across your body. You're going to have basically a slot of where it's going to be effective here, where the end of the slot is going to be this kind of high elbow position. And if you look where his pecs are here, they pretty much go straight across. So some of these upper fibers are going to be working in this position. If he's got an arch, you can kind of work mid, even the lower pecs here to a certain degree. But for most people, this is going to be as high as I would recommend going. You've got some shoulder joint stuff that you might kind of smush some stuff in that subacromial space, just the space between your acromion, which is where your scapula comes up and creates the top of your shoulder joint. So again, most people probably don't need to be quite this high. At the same time, you don't want to be tucked all the way in. If we looked at his arm path here, that arm path is pretty much going to line up just with the front delt, not going to line up with pec fibers a whole lot. Once you get around 45 degrees-ish, now you're at least starting to bias some of those fibers that attach to your collarbone, and of course some of these are going to work as well too. So for most people, I would say somewhere from 45 degree-ish up to maybe just below 90 are going to be good spots, and your entire chest can work in either of those. So I say mess around with that slot. A lot of people just start bench pressing and just kind of stick with whatever they stick with. It's worth trying to find, should you be more here, 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 and here. Secondly, once you determine what arm path works best for you, from there then mess around with your grip. And so when you're in the bottom, so let's pretend Cody's in the bottom of the bench press, you want to take a width on the bar where your hand is stacked directly above your elbow. So determine your grip width by the bottom position, right? If you're in too close, arguably you're going to have more triceps involved. If you're out too far, you're actually going to limit the range of motion at your shoulder joint and limit how much range of motion you're getting at your pec. So again, once you find your arm path, stick with that arm path, go to your bottom position, and then take your grip on the bar right above the elbow. Also with grip, this is maybe tip number 2.5, mess around with, I'll just say what I do. I prefer a false grip, so thumb over top of the bar. There are some safety issues there because if you're uncoordinated, you may drop the bar on your face, so don't drop the bar on your face. But I've been doing a false grip, or a suicide grip as some people call it, again, which name implies if you drop the bar on your face, that's the end of you. But again, I think it's helpful sometimes for some people to keep their wrist stacked, where if you have the bar too high in your hand with that thumb wrapped, you can actually have a lot of extension issues to deal with. So again, I'm not telling you to do the false grip or the suicide grip because that may be unsafe. I'm just saying that's the way that I like to do it, and I know other people that like to do it that well too. So mess around with the type of grip you have as well too. Next, I'm gonna have Cody demonstrate an arch. So tip number 3 is find the right arch. You can lay back on this one, Cody. So again, this is gonna be one where how much individual dependent. Now, if he just laid completely flat, so round there and kind of just let your chest cave in a little bit, if he's completely flat, if we're pressing straight up, a lot of these lower and mid fibers are not in line with the bar path at all. So if he goes and arches some more, then basically we're going to be putting more of these lower and mid fibers, particularly the lower fibers in the same plane as the bar path. So if the goal is to recruit as much pecs as possible, a little bit of an arch upwards to a pretty big arch is not a bad thing. The only downside with a big arch is as you're coming to the bottom, does it shorten the range of motion just a little bit. Now, is that a bad thing? In my opinion, it's not a big deal. Bench press is not designed to fully lengthen the pec. Really, you're probably going to do that more with fly variations. You're not going to fully contract it with a bench press either. So again, even if your range of motion is a little bit limited, I still think the arch is going to be more beneficial just to get more pec fibers in the plane of motion that you're pressing. And so again, I'm not going to say exactly how much, but again, somewhere between being kind of flat and crunched down and then going all the way to a huge arch as much as you can arch that back, probably a little bit off of that position. So try and mess around with that a little bit. Again, if the goal is big chest, then from there figure out where you basically feel the most chest recruitment and keep it still. So whatever position you're in, keep your midsection tight. Don't let it move around a lot as you go through it. Tip number 4, I want you to row into the bottom. So I'm gonna have Cody grab the bar here. And what I mean by rowing the bottom, a lot of people talk about shoulder blades during a bench press. What I want you to feel like is when you have a pretty big arch, so arch just a little bit for me, Cody. When you're lowering to the bottom, instead of just thinking lower it, feel like you're rowing it, meaning at the bottom, you're really trying to squeeze your shoulder blades together, even not just a component of backing together, even a little bit of a down component. So again, when you're at the bottom position, you don't want your shoulder blades kind of winged, you don't want them round forward, you don't want to be in this position. You want them basically retracted as far as you can and a little bit depressed. So again, when you're coming into the bottom of your bench press, think the exact same thing like you would rowing the bar, actually pulling it into you as opposed to just doing it pretty relaxed. And that's going to be a very good way, don't do it up where Cody's doing it, do it more like down here. But that's going to be a very good way to find the position you want your shoulder blades to be in at the bottom of a bench press. Now once you contract, your shoulder blades may move a tiny bit to the finish, and that's fine. You don't have to keep them set and locked in stone, but to kind of reset the bottom of every one, really feel like you're rowing, pinching those shoulder blades down, back, and together. I'm gonna have Cody rack the bar up. Tip number 5, and you can do the same thing obviously with bar in hand. Let me have your hand, Cody. We're just gonna hold hands now while you guys watch. Just kidding, it's not that kind of video. But what I want you guys to think about is, again, your pec, bring it down here, exists basically just across your shoulder joint, obviously doesn't connect to your hand. So a big mistake a lot of people do when they bench is they just think up and down. Obviously the bar has to move up and down, but because this is bodybuilding, because this is muscle building, you want more focus on the muscle, more focus on what the muscle's actually doing. Think more about what your upper arm is doing. So think about bringing your bicep across your body. So again, obviously as your bicep and your upper arm comes across your body, you know, your hand's gonna raise up, the bar is gonna go up. But that thought process of thinking about your pec contracting hard and driving that bicep, a good cue I even say for most people is feel like you're trying to smush your bicep into the side of the pec to finish. And if you have that thought process, that internal thought process of pec contracting and pulling your arm across your body, you're gonna have much more pec involvement as opposed to just up. You can arguably use a lot more triceps, you can use a lot more front delts when you're doing that. Next one, if you could sit up for me on this one, Cody. Next one is good advice for all lifting, but especially on the bench press, where it's a pretty big range of motion. The same as every exercise, there's a skill component. But when I look at the way people that are very proficient bench pressers, people getting a lot out of their muscles, lots of people, when they're not doing it well, they're not getting the most out, they're just dropping the bar. So some of it is obviously on every exercise for muscle building, you should be lowering it with the muscle. But the bar path is important here. So as you're going down, you're having the bar come in a different path every time, hit a different position on your chest every time. You're also not going to be very strong that way. So again, yes, lower it because you want to lower it with your chest, you want to use your muscles. But 2, you want to actually have a good proper skill. So you want the skill of your bench press to be proficient and be the same every single time. Once you get good at it, you want the eccentric to go in the exact same plane every time and hit the exact same spot on your chest every single time. The next one, number 7, is not an all the time thing, but it's at least for some period of time, most people would benefit doing pauses at the bottom of your bench press. So again, as you lower, the goal is to actually use your chest, not just whatever you can to get the bar up. So a lot of people literally have this like collision. They drop the bar, bang it off of their chest just so they can get as much weight up as possible. So 1, you want to actually pause to make sure you're using your muscles, your chest, not momentum to move the weight. But also it ties in with that skill component as well too, where again, you want to make sure you're at the exact same spot every single time, so you're not having a different training effect every single time that you go. And the last tip number 8, is use subtle varying in degrees of the bench. So again, a lot of people get stuck with you have to do flat barbell bench press because it's this kind of the king of upper body exercises. Again, it can be a very good exercise, but again, within the muscle building world, slight variations can make massive differences. So I have this high-tech tool here. I'll actually have Cody hop up so I can show you guys how this works. This is called a plate. So what you can do with this plate is you can put it under the front of the bench. And now you have a decline bench that's only declined by a few degrees. Or you could put 2 plates under the top of the bench, not at the same time one's under there, then you're back to a flat bench. But you could do 2 at the top of the legs of the bench and have the slightest of incline. So yes, you can incline obviously up to 10 degrees, 15 degrees, 30 degrees, or you can decline 10, 15 degrees. But just this subtle difference will get you in a slightly different path, and even use, again, slightly different recruitment of stuff coming on with some of the small muscles involved, some of the stabilizers around the shoulder joint and around some of the other things involved. And lots of times because bodybuilding, because building muscle is such a repetitive thing, getting out of your same path just a little bit, just a few degrees, can make a massive difference. So this is worth messing around with too. Sometimes if you're having some shoulder issues or shoulder pain, this slight adjustment in bench angle can make all the difference in the world. And sometimes it makes a big difference for recruitment as well, where you'll just feel your pecs working a lot more, you know, at a 2 or 3 degree decline or a 2 to 3 degree incline. So again, all of this stuff hopefully to help you get the most out of your bench, again with the goal of muscle building in mind and not necessarily just having to perform an exercise A to B, using as much weight as possible. So hopefully those 8 tips help. If they do, again, please share with somebody, hit that thumbs up, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't. I told you it'd be worth it, right? I didn't lie. And until the next one, guys, hopefully this will help crank up that bench press and get you some big old pecs.